Hey everybody, welcome to the Joy of Coding at Portland State University. In this lecture, we'll explore techniques for working with others to develop software. We'll learn about pair programming, in which two people share a screen and a keyboard while developing code, and ensemble programming, also known as mob programming, in which an entire team of people work collaboratively to develop code. Along the way, we'll discuss the benefits and the costs of this style of development and see how following some well-defined roles and interaction patterns can provide just enough structure to make programming with others effective, efficient, and even fun. Contemporary software development is seen as a team sport in which a number of people in a bunch of different roles contribute to outcomes that no individual could achieve alone. Even programming, the act of writing code and telling a computer what to do, which was long considered a solitary pursuit, sees a lot of benefit when multiple people work in real time, collaborating to make decisions, to write code, and to validate results. In this lecture, we'll explore two techniques for working with others to develop software. The first is pair programming, in which two people work together to solve a problem together. And the other technique is ensemble programming, or also known as mob programming, which an entire team of 5 to 7 people work together to solve a problem. People collaborating in software development is nothing new. And the Agile Software Development School of Thought promotes collaboration to enable rapid feedback loops. So you make a change, you learn something, and then you act on that learning. This learning is amplified when people in different roles, so someone who represents the customer, someone who represents a developer, someone who is focused on quality, all work together to continually understand, implement, and refine solutions to the problems. One common technical practice in Agile software development is unit testing. So unit tests and continuous integration provide feedback on code changes shortly after they occur. Another feedback loop concerns the user's experience, which is assessed often and determines what's done next. You're looking to solve real problems for real people. And so in Agile software development, different people in different roles contribute their points of view and their knowledge and their passions to inform the decisions and what to do next. So people work together all the time to get work done and to learn from the experience so they can do more work later even better. Now, collaboration is hard, and even for people who are very experienced, it's something that can require a lot of focus and a lot of attention. So putting some structure in place to guide collaboration, to kind of have some rules of the road, some guidelines, can be very helpful, especially when you're starting out, especially in the beginning of what you're doing. And remember, all of our outcomes, whether they're the outcomes that we expect, they're positive outcomes or negative outcomes, result from the behaviors of the individuals that contribute to those outcomes. And so when you're acting with others, it's especially important to be deliberate in how you act, to think about what you're doing and how it impacts others, and that'll help influence the outcomes that you're looking for. So let's talk about pair programming. Now, pairs of people have worked together since the beginning of computing. However, the term pair programming was really first popularized in the late 90s in a book published by Kent Beck called Extreme Programming, or XP. XP described pair programming as the following. You have two people who sit together in front of the screen. Together, they talk about the problem, they discuss, they explore particular solutions to the problems that they're looking to solve. And the pair programming model, along with all the other XP practices, is very fluid and very dynamic. You can't necessarily predict what you'll be doing next week, tomorrow, or even in the next minute. And this fits really well with complex problems that you're looking to solve. Problems that are easy to solve, are rote, and probably can be automated away. One of the nice things about pair programming, and something that made it very efficient, is that it provides just enough structure to accomplish your goals without being exhausting or confining. There aren't a lot of rules, there's a handful of guidelines. In pair programming, there are two traditional roles, the driver and the navigator. Now, one person is the driver, and they can be thought of as the hands who are on the keyboard, and they write the code. And they are focused very tactically. They're focused on exactly like the next thing that needs to be done. And so they write the code on the keyboard, and they talk about what they're writing. Now, the navigator is more of the brains, meaning that they are looking at the bigger picture. And so they're looking at what's written, they provide feedback, and they think more strategically about where they're going in the long term, and not just what's happening here in the minute. And they're also on the lookout for things that can be improved, things that can be refactored. So maybe some code that could use some better naming, or a potential bug there that a unit test hasn't caught yet. Now, do know that these aren't always and forever roles. As a matter of fact, it's really effective to have pairs exchange roles every couple of minutes. So that one person gets experience as the driver and gets to think in that mode, and then they switch to the navigator role and get to think in a different mode. And this helps avoid exhaustion and also provides multiple perspectives on the work. In general, pairing works best when the pair works on very small goals one after another. And we'll see some examples of how this looks in a minute. Now, one of the benefits of having two people solving a problem is that it's easier to avoid analysis paralysis, where a person just gets stuck thinking about a problem, all the solutions, too many things to consider, can't get the ideas out of their head, and so then pairs tend to have a bias towards taking action. So instead of talking about a problem endlessly, try something out and see how it works. There have been a number of benefits that have been cited of pair programming over the years, and here are some of them. First of all, knowledge is built together and collaboratively and is shared across individuals. In order to do this, you should look for opportunities to pair with people who have different expertise than you. Maybe more expertise or maybe even less expertise. You'll definitely learn something. A great way to get a new team member up to speed is to have them pair with someone else, to learn about the code, to learn about the environment, and to see the work in action. And because so much learning is enabled, and learning is enabled quicker, pair programming doesn't double the cost of coding. There's a lot more to programming than typing. There's all the thinking, there's all the decision making, there's all the trying out of options, and a lot of that happens away from the keyboard. And that's thinking work, not just typing work. There's also a lot of benefit derived from articulating what you're thinking through speech. When you have to explain, when you have to have a conversation about what you're thinking, it really helps clarify things. It communicates why you're doing what you're doing, what it is that you're doing, and how you're going to do it, and then representing it all in code. Now, this requires safety, to be able to speak up when there's something that you don't understand, and also the safety to give feedback to others who you don't necessarily know how they're going to react. So we'll talk about ways that we can provide an environment in which people can contribute authentically and feel confident that there won't be retribution for what they do contribute. When you have two people working on a problem, there are actually fewer distractions and detours when two people are focused. Again, that constant communication helps avoid rabbit holes. It's less likely that you'll get distracted by something else happening on your machine because there's someone there working with you to keep your eyes on the road. You're also getting constant and consistent review and feedback on your code. And because the feedback comes earlier, it's easier to maintain good software coding discipline. So you're more likely to refactor your code. You're not going to let little things slide like hard to understand names. Additionally, in pair programming, both tactical and strategic thinking occur at the same time. This increases the quality of what's written there in the moment because the entire picture is in view. You've got the driver working on and focusing on what to type, and then you've got the navigator thinking about how will this solve the problem, what's the next test I need to write. It really provides a nice balance. Because code is written together, you end up with a more resilient team. Meaning that you don't have silos, you don't have parts of the code that only one person knows, or particular subsystems that only one person can modify. And nor do you have bottlenecks, because if that person goes on vacation or is sick that day, if work can't get done, then everybody's blocked. You end up with a team in which more people feel comfortable working with the entire code base. Pair programming also removes multitasking. The ability to say, oh boy, I don't know, I can't solve this thing right now, let's start something else. And as a result, you have fewer things that start, but a lot more things finish that get driven to done and lets you move on to something else. This minimizes the work in progress that you have, the amount of plates that you need to keep spinning, and it makes the work in progress visible, because multiple people are looking at it. Pair programming also leverages the natural diversity that occurs on a team. So these are people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different amount of experiences. And because they're all working together, they must be more intentional and more explicit about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And this builds a better understanding of the overall problem and the solution that everyone's working towards. And as a result, the outcomes are not only better understood, they're simpler because they've had multiple people contributing to them and had people say, well, explain to me from this point of view. Well, what if we did this instead? It ends up with a much more fluid and ultimately a higher quality solution. So let's talk about some more concrete patterns for pair programming. There's a pattern called strong style pairing, which emphasizes knowledge transfer. This is very useful when you've got a navigator or one member of the pair who has much more experience than the driver. So think of this as more like driver's ed, like you're learning to drive, as opposed to we're all going on a road trip. In strong style pairing, the way knowledge is transferred is that in order for an idea to go from one person's head into the computer, it must go through someone else's hands. Which means that the concepts must be explained well enough so that someone who is not necessarily very familiar with those concepts can implement them in code. And this can be difficult to do. One of the challenges for the navigator is that they have to give instructions when the driver is ready to follow them and at the appropriate level of abstraction. So the driver isn't just merely taking dictation from the navigator. The navigator doesn't say, hey, type this character, then type that character. The navigator has to determine and figure out and explore what level of abstraction the driver can most easily understand. So it might be something like, write a test that makes sure that the configuration file exists. For the driver's part, the driver must be comfortable with being inexperienced and acknowledging that there are things that they don't know, whether it's the tools that are being used or the terminology or the domain that the driver and the navigator are exploring. Because strong style pairing has so much knowledge transfer, there are often a lot of questions about why things exist or why certain decisions are made. And the driver and the navigator need to be deliberate about answering those questions in the moment versus tabling them for later until the pairing session is completed and a follow-up discussion can occur. Another pattern for pair programming is called ping-pong pairing. Ping-pong pairing is all about leveraging test-driven development to get work done. The way this works is that one developer will write a unit test, and then the keyboard will pass to the other developer to make it pass. And then together, they refactor the code to make it better. So it's that red-green refactor cycle, ping-ponging back and forth between two people. Another pattern is called pair development, which emphasizes pairing in all aspects of software development, not just writing the code. So when it comes to establishing a larger goal for the work, what user problem are we looking to solve? That can happen in a pair. Understanding and exploring the problem. Also, collaborating with someone else to check your understanding against, are we ready to start? Have we explored all the things that we need to explore before getting down to work? Sketching out solutions together and researching unfamiliar topics, right? Going off and understanding APIs or various algorithms, the tools that you can use, and the techniques that you can apply with those tools. And also documenting your decisions and what's been learned, doing that as a pair also. Now, working with someone else usually requires a different kind of energy than just working by yourself. And for some people it can be very motivating, but for other people it can be very draining. So pace yourself when you're pair programming. Consider applying the Pomodoro technique, in which you work for a little bit and then you take breaks, both short breaks and long breaks, so that you can space out the work and establish a natural cadence of focus and unfocus. Over time, and these are days or weeks, rotate new people into the pair. Don't pair with the same person forever. You'll miss opportunities for learning and you'll miss opportunities for sharing your knowledge and what you know. So even though pairing can be intense, have the courage to express what you're feeling. If you're tired, if you're confused, if you're excited, if you're frustrated, if you're bored, let your pair partner know so you can take action on that. And don't just code all the time. Take time away from the keyboard to reflect on your experience. Even 5 minutes is enough to really explore the most important topics and integrate learning and decide what you want to do going forward. Again, realize that all the talking, all the collaboration can be very draining for some people, especially people who are inexperienced with pair programming. Give everybody the opportunity to rest and be mindful of everybody's feelings and reactions. Now, if the pair gets stuck on something, maybe they realize there's something they don't know or they've tried a bunch of things and are out of ideas, that would be a good time to work on something else. Probably a good idea is to take a break, take a walk, have a discussion, drink some water, whatever. But work on something else to let your brain work in the background to provide new insights. It's also really important to make sure that the area in which you're working is comfortable. Listen to your body and how it feels and adjust accordingly. And finally, don't forget to celebrate what you accomplish. It's really easy to do a lot of pair programming and have a lot of stuff go by and not really realize what you've done, what you've accomplished. So when pairing, there are some pitfalls that you should be on the lookout for. Be mindful if a navigator is silent or maybe can't get a word in while the driver does all the typing and all the talking. This is a collaboration. It's not taking turns watching one person type. Also, be on the lookout for a navigator who tries to grab the keyboard and take over, or a driver that relinquishes the keyboard a little too easily. Again, it's a collaboration. This might happen when you have a more experienced driver who moves really fast, writes a lot of code because they think they know what to do, and then the navigator gets left behind in the dust. Also be on the lookout for planning farther ahead than just the next move. You'll miss opportunities to learn, and you might waste time now making decisions that turn out to be irrelevant in the near future. Also be on the lookout for just talking about options and not trying them out. The nice thing about pairing, the nice thing about software is that's very malleable. You can try something out, and if it doesn't work out, okay, fine. Throw it away, do your git revert, and start over again. Be on the lookout for going too long without switching roles or taking a break, or pairs that become impatient with each other. Now, depending on the two individuals who are pairing, there might be organizational or cultural power dynamics at play. So be mindful of that. Look for opportunities to amplify the voice of maybe someone who isn't usually heard in a discussion. Pairing requires a certain amount of vulnerability to acknowledge that there are things that you don't know. Right? The solution doesn't exist, and there's not always a straight line from where you are today to where you want to be next. And also be on the lookout for friction that develops that isn't resolved. Now, I mean, of course, two people work together, there are going to be some disagreements. But if over time parents don't develop techniques to create a safe environment where they can acknowledge their confusion and their frustration, it won't work well in the long term. Now, there are some situations in which pair programming might not be the best approach. So if you've got a task that is boring or is rote that you've done a million times, you can do it one more, it probably won't benefit from pairing because the problem's already well understood. There's not a lot of learning to be had. As a matter of fact, these are the kind of tasks that ought to be automated, right? Instead of having to type out a bunch of code that you've already typed out before, figure out a macro to do it. Write a little program to generate code or to solve the problem for you. That can be done with pair programming. And when you're learning something new, doing something by yourself can give you some good feedback. So after you've done it with a pair, maybe take some time on your own to determine whether or not you can really do this yourself. If you can, that's great. You've probably learned it. Maybe you learned something new working on your own that you want to share with others, or maybe you're finding that you're not quite ready to do it on your own and you need a little bit more reinforcement from the pair. A really good way to do this is by rotating pairs. And look for people with similar amounts of experience, either a lot of experience or a little experience, to work with, to see if your knowledge and your capabilities match those of others. Now, there's been a lot of discussion of the pros and cons of code reviews versus pair programming. Right? A code review is in which one person looks at the code that someone else has written and provides feedback. Well, clearly, code review happens after the fact and provides feedback that's later than the kind of feedback that you get during pairing. Code reviews also tend to have a different nature of ownership. Instead of having collective ownership of the code, you might have someone who feels that they are a gatekeeper of the code. So when reviewing someone else's code, there are things that they might not let through. Or maybe you've got someone that doesn't feel a lot of ownership of it and just sort of rubber stamps it. Oh yeah, right. That code works, test will pass, it must be good enough. You don't get the same kind of collaboration that you do in pair programming. A code reviewer might see something that they think can be improved, but they might be afraid to suggest rework because the code has already been done, right? Someone's already done it to the best of their abilities, and do you really want to go back and take more time? Additionally, code reviews by an individual can be really distracting because it's not work that the person who's reviewing the code is very familiar with. Certainly, it's not what they're focusing on right now. And as a result, this can have amplified effect on the team, where lots of people are distracted or see code reviews as a chore instead of a collaborative activity in which software is developed.